massive fan of women's sport, and I was coaching elite women's teams in the late 80s when really there was some real challenges in this country about attitude, assets, respect for women athletes. I've never got it. I've never understood why people treat female athletes different to male athletes. Look, I understand, we do a lot of advisory work around this, that there's different commercial values in sport. But it's not just across gender, it's also across sports as well. And I think it's a gross generalisation when women are subjected to being almost like the second-class citizens of top-level sport. So the Euros did a fantastic job for women's football. What concerns me about that, though, is that it was fantastic. There was a lot of people attended. There was loads of interest. There's increased interest on broadcast now, which is good. But there are still not many people watching the games. There is still not commercial investment going into the women's game, perhaps as much as there should be. So I think it's incumbent on those who are leading the major football associations and organisations across the world that they perhaps mandate Premier League football teams and people like that to put more money into the women's game. We see it in rugby. This week in Rugby League, for instance, the women's team have lost in a semi-final against New Zealand. That women's team, of which I know some of those athletes, are completely committed. Wonderful, wonderful athletes, but they are part-time rugby players. They have jobs, they have kids, they have commitments. They have to get up early and they have to train late, and they have to fit all of that around being an elite athlete as well. You come up against a team like the Gillaroos, the Aussies, the Kiwis, or the Ferns as they're called, the New Zealand team, and they're full-time athletes, a lot of those players. They're always going to beat us. So I think there has to be a change of attitude from the top Super League clubs. I think there has to be a change in funding, and I think instead of talking about it, which I'm bored of, where we hear the coach of England quite rightly saying these girls got to be full-time, we hear Jodie Cunningham, a fantastic ambassador for Women's Rugby League, saying the same. Well, let's get behind these athletes. Let's put some money into it. Let's not talk about it anymore because I'm bored of talk. Let's make sure that those athletes are treated well. So Leeds Rhinos, Gary Hedrington, the CEO, said they're going to start paying the girl athletes next year. Fantastic. But it's not just about money. It's about attitude. It's about making sure those Super League, Rugby League players are able to train in the same assets and same standards as the men. That they get treated like the male athletes in the changing facilities. That they get the same food, nutrition, strength and condition advice. Now, I know for a fact that many of the clubs do that. But I also know for a fact that some of the clubs don't. So, a real highlight for me, women winning the Euros. But I think it's the start of the journey and the investment and commitment to women's sport.